to you, Lord.
Filled with the Holy Spirit, Jesus returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the desert for 40 days. Tempted there by the devil, he ate nothing during those days, and when they were over, he was hungry. The devil said to him, "If you're the Son of God, command this stone to become bread." Jesus answered him, "It is written, one does not live on bread alone." Then the devil took Jesus up to a high place and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a single instant. The devil said to him, "I shall give you all this power and glory, for it has been handed over to me, and I may give it to whomever I wish. All this will be yours if you worship me." Jesus said to him in reply, "It is written, you shall worship your God, and him alone shall you serve." Then the devil led Jesus to Jerusalem, made him stand on the parapet of the temple, and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here. For it's written, he will command his angels concerning you to guard you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against the stone." Jesus said to him in reply, "It also says, you shall not put your God to the test." When the devil had finished every temptation, he departed from Jesus for a time. This is the good news regarding our brother Jesus.
Praise to you, Jesus Christ.
Have a seat. Well, several of our friends have been wintering in warmer places. Kendall is back from Phoenix, in the desert Southwest. And we were talking about last week, it's really a beautiful landscape and a great escape from these gray days, the ones that we were enduring up till today. There's a unique beauty to the desert. It's rugged but majestic, clean and dry but hot and barren. It's a land of sharp contrasts, as if the void of one thing highlights the presence of another. A perfect retreat for Jesus or anyone seeking to empty herself in order to discover what rises up. Jesus, who had just been baptized in the Jordan by his cousin John, did as he often did throughout his life. Led by the Spirit, he sought refuge in the wilderness prior to starting his public ministry. As I tried to think about the desert experiences in my life, I could come up with a few times when I felt alone, out in uncharted territory without a sense of where I would end up or how things would turn out. When I first left for college, I was really only a few blocks from home, but it felt like it was the first time I was completely on my own. When I left my first husband, the security of a shared home and the resources, the presence of a companion regardless of our conflicts and differences, it was as if I had thrown myself into the wilderness of single life. If we haven't experienced times like that in our lives, times that have left us feeling alone in a rough and barren land, at some point it will happen. It is easy to think of catastrophic events and times of pronounced solitude as moments in the desert, but I don't think that was what Jesus experienced. Though the Spirit is with us during life's most difficult times, it isn't the Spirit that leads us there. Jesus went into the wilderness led by the Spirit. It was a retreat from daily life, a time to think and reflect. What was it that Jesus was seeking? What was it that the Spirit of God intended for those 40 days? As I've been working on my health over the past few months, one of my new companions is a guy named Larry. Larry is a person who was previously overweight. He is a diet success story, and he was assigned to me to be my diet coach. As we commiserated over the tendency to plateau on the scale, that period of time in weight loss where no matter how disciplined you are, your body just kind of takes a break. I am done with this weight loss thing. I'm just going to sit right on this number, not move. I don't care what you do. It's the type of experience that makes weekly weigh-ins very frustrating. Well, Larry met my frustration with the words, yes, but don't you love the way that you can taste food again? I had to admit that cleaning my body from all the junk I had regularly consumed brought to life the flavors and textures of vegetables and lean proteins. Who would have thought that a jackfruit could mimic a breakfast sausage? Or that blanched asparagus would make a salad sing? We get so busy in life that we stuff ourselves without really tasting things. We rush through our conversations without really listening. We spend money without really budgeting. We drive cars without really taking in the scenery. We glance out the window without really engaging nature. What would it be like to put the practice of pause back into our lives? To pause before each bite, to pause before responding in conversation, to pause before the beginning and end of each day. Wouldn't we experience those moments more fully? It was Saturday, March 21st of 2020. Do you remember the day? At 5 o'clock that day, the state of Illinois paused, and we went into full shutdown during the COVID pandemic. We were ordered to stay in our homes, and we were prohibited from gathering with people in groups larger than 10 until further notice. We lived on Windsor Road at the time, one of the fastest, most furious thoroughfares in the city. Lots of traffic noise. But I woke up that next morning and opened our bedroom window to an eerie silence. No traffic sounds at all, just the rustling of trees, the songs of birds. That period of home confinement was extended until May 29th. But the impact of that social isolation has affected us forever. It's changed us. Forced to stop working and going places with other people, I learned a lot about myself. I realized how much I feared dying, as I would panic with each sneeze or sniffle. I thought that I might have contracted COVID. I learned that I didn't like being ordered by the government to stop working. I had worked really hard to put together a private practice, and I was afraid that all those years would be wasted and destroyed by the lack of in-person contact with the people that I was treating. I also learned that I could spend a day painting with watercolors. I took an online watercolor course, and I imagined constructing a quilt. I could check in with my friends and family by Zoom and even play my cello with other students with the right sound equipment. It was a time that the Spirit led us into the desert for our well-being and that of the common good. When we put aside our daily habits, voluntarily or forced, when we put a pause between our desires and our usual means of fulfilling those desires, we get an opportunity to see what rises up, what it was that drove our behaviors in the first place, what it was that we were trying to fulfill. In an article called The Power of Pause, The Art of Shifting Habits, F.M. Alexander says, people do not decide their futures. They decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures. Pausing, the author says, opens up a vital space. In that space between stimulus and unconscious reactions, we allow choice. And so to me, it's not hard to imagine why the Spirit called Jesus into the wilderness, into the desert where he fasted and prayed. It was a sort of boot camp experience for Jesus before he stepped into the most difficult 3 years of his life. Jesus got to wrestle with his habits. He got to hit the pause button and choose how to respond. Here we see 3 things that revealed themselves to Jesus in the starkness of the desert. First, Jesus struggled with his earthly appetites. It's not hard to imagine how tempting the idea of turning a stone into bread would have been after 40 days of fasting. I might have been happy to eat the stone. But Jesus shifted his appetite from food to an appetite for God. For it is written that man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Jesus struggled with his desire to prove his true identity. The devil said, "You're the Son of God, then throw yourself down." But Jesus rested in his security and his identity. No need to put that to the test. Jesus wrestled with greed. All of this will be yours, if only. But then he counted the cost and affirmed his commitment to God. In the end, Jesus' responses revealed to him that he was dependent on God rather than on himself for life, for glory, and for identity. Writer Joseph Chilton Pearce, in his book, The Biology of Transcendence, suggests a method for pausing. He calls it the use of a freeze frame. Pearce says that when we're in a stressful situation, like being confronted by the devil, we should recognize the situation for what it is and freeze that moment before reacting. Let all the inner chatter and emotional reactivity settle down. Then he suggests we shift our focus to thoughts about a person whom we love. Someone who makes your heart swell. Hold your attention on that person for a few seconds. Let yourself feel the love. Feel the joy that they bring you. With the focus on your heart and these feelings of love, then allow yourself to open up to your natural intuition and common sense about what's going on in the present situation. Consider what would be the most effective response. Pay attention to what you hear and feel as your heart speaks to you. Some theorists call this the wise mind, where our emotional mind and our rational mind meet. Others see it as a chance to provide distance between our emotional reactions and our sense of self, as if to hold that emotional response at a distance and to introduce yourself to it. Hello, anger. It's nice to meet you. Have a seat. Let's decide together what role you will play and how I choose to respond to the situation here. All of those are methods for creating pause. And we see Jesus utilizing these means in the desert. Consistently, when Jesus is confronted by one of his human weaknesses, he shifts his focus to God. He holds his relationship to God in full heart awareness and speaks from that place. I am to live by every word that comes from the mouth of God. I am to worship God alone. God is the one I serve. I'm not to put God to the test. I remember going to Mass a few years ago and seeing a sign on a table in the vestibule, reminding us of our obligation to do penance, to fast, give alms, and do works of mercy during Lent. The sign also stated that to not do what we are obligated to do would be a sin. Hence, we should go to confession and try again. As one deacon put it, Lent is the spiritual equivalent of scrutinizing yourself in a tall mirror, first thing in the morning, under a glaring 100-watt bare ball, naked, standing on a scale. It is not a pretty picture. Every imperfection is exposed. While there's everything good about fasting and almsgiving, works of mercy and self-reflection, and there's nothing more liberating than a good confession. And, throw in giving up a habit like eating chocolate or meat for Lent. That all has the potential to teach us a lot about ourselves, but shaming ourselves over our human frailties is never helpful. Somehow we think that by suffering and denying ourselves any carnal pleasures, we relate more to the sufferings of Christ, who denied himself, took up his cross, and died for our sins and for our salvation. We believe that what pleasures us makes us sinful, and suffering by denying ourselves is the only path towards redemption. Thus, the desert must be a place of danger, torment, and temptation. But if we turn that theology on its head, beginning with the notion that we are intrinsically good, that our desires and appetites are intrinsically human, and thus good, then we can see the 40 days in the desert as a gift, a retreat, an opportunity to pause. And by pausing, we can choose. And by choosing, we can live.